Welcome to Reverence for Reverie, where we explore the hidden currents beneath waking life, the unseen forces shaping our consciousness, our reality, and our deepest selves. I'm Marissa, and today we're diving into one of the most fascinating doorways into the unconscious, dreams. You'll have to bear with me with my voice. I've just gotten over some sort of, allergy flare-up or viral something. But I'm on the way to recovery, so hopefully it doesn't get too disruptive here. So dreams have been called the royal road to the unconscious, a phrase coined by Freud, and for good reason. They bypass the constraints of rational thought, allowing something deeper, more primal, and often more truthful to emerge. And I have to share a quick story here because during my own personal psychoanalysis, I once brought in this dream where I was walking down a path that felt distinctly like London. I described it as leading towards something that reminded me of Buckingham Palace. I think I had recently been watching like The Crown or something like that on Netflix. I could feel that it was important, almost regal, but I couldn't quite place why. And I've never been personally to Buckingham Palace or even London for that matter. But it wasn't until my analyst pointed it out that I had one of those classic aha moments. It was the royal road to the unconscious. While I haven't gone to London, it was the signal that I was certainly entering the realm of the unconscious, and I had literally dreamed it. Without realizing, I was walking straight into this metaphor. So it was really funny, humbling, and it's such a perfect example of how dreams speak to us in symbols that are both obvious and layered all at the same time. So let me ask you, have you ever had a dream that lingered in your mind long after waking? One of those that kind of stuck with you all day long? Maybe it felt important, as if it was trying to tell you something, but in a language that you couldn't quite decipher. What if I told you that dreams are speaking to us all the time? We've just forgotten how to listen. So today we're exploring how psychoanalysis views dreams as messengers of the unconscious mind, why dream symbols are not random but deeply personal and meaningful, and how learning the language of dreams can unlock hidden truths within ourselves, about yourself, your desires, your fears, even your past. So let's step into the realm of dreams and see what they have to tell us. Every night, as we drift into sleep, something sacred begins to happen. The edges of reality soften, our breathing slows, the boundaries between body and soul begin to blur. Suddenly, somewhere else, a world without logic, without time, a place where past and present weave together, where the dead speak, and where symbols carry a weight beyond words. For centuries, dreams have captured the imagination of mystics, philosophers, and scientists alike. The ancient Egyptians believed they were messages from the gods, and many indigenous cultures view dreams as sacred guidance from ancestors. In the West, modern psychology has offered its own framework for understanding what unfolds behind our eyelids. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, believed that dreams were disguised wish fulfillments, expressions of repressed desires that the waking mind just couldn't accept. He saw them as puzzles, with hidden meanings wrapped in metaphor. Carl Jung took this idea a little further. He believed that dreams were not just about individual desires, but about wholeness, a way for the psyche to communicate with itself. To Jung, dreams were messages from the deeper self, revealing what we need to integrate in order to grow. Have you ever woken from a dream that just clung to you? Not just for what it was showing you, but for what it stirred in you. A dream that felt like it came from someplace ancient, or perhaps from a part of you that you hadn't yet met. So this is where things get really interesting, because if dreams are messages from the unconscious, then they're not random. They're intentional, structured, woven together in a symbolic language that is unique to you. But here's the challenge. Dreams don't speak in words. They speak in images, in sensations, in symbols. And if we don't understand how to interpret them, it's like receiving a letter in a language that we just don't know how to read. Maybe I can help you with that today. Let's imagine for a moment that you're trying to tell someone something deeply personal, but you can't say it outright. Maybe it's too painful, too complex, too layered for direct words. So instead, it's like you leave clues, images, gestures, metaphors. You're hoping they'll piece it together. This is how dreams communicate to us. The unconscious doesn't operate in the same way as the logical waking mind. It doesn't write in linear sentences or bullet points. Instead, it gives us symbols, sensations, and images, each one charged with meaning that is both universal and deeply personal. For example, water often appears in dreams, but what it means depends entirely on you. To one person, water might represent emotion, the vast shifting tides of the psyche. To another, it might symbolize rebirth, a womb-like state, a cleansing or a transition of some sort. To someone who fears drowning, water could point to overwhelm, a sense of being consumed by something that they can't control. Other ways that we might look at water is like if the water is clear in a dream, it might represent internal clarity or emerging clarity. Yet if it's murky or dark, it might symbolize the fear of going deeper or wading into territory where we don't know what lies beneath. These meanings are not random. They're shaped by your lived experiences, your memories, your associations. That's why dream dictionaries, while they are very tempting, often miss the mark. They treat symbols as fixed, but the unconscious is anything but. The real question is, what does the symbol mean to you? And yet, I do want to hold the recognition and complexity that some symbols do carry archetypal weight. As Jung believed, certain images like the mother, the shadow, the serpent, the house appear across cultures and across time. These are part of what he called the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared human imagery that speaks to deeper truths that we all carry, even if we do interpret them differently. Sometimes the message is subtle. A house might appear in your dream, different levels, hidden rooms, lights turning on or off, windows locked or open. On the surface, it's just a house. But symbolically, it might represent your inner world, your psyche. What part of the house were you in? Was it familiar? Were you alone? Was the area clean, bright, and clear? Or dark, shadowy, and covered in cobwebs? Did it feel nostalgic? Or recognizable yet unfamiliar? Are you getting a taste of the juicy complexity that lies within the layers of a dream yet? And what makes symbols so powerful is that they bypass the intellect. They speak to us in ways that logic cannot. A dream doesn't just tell you you're overwhelmed. It shows you a rising tide, a flood, a leaky ceiling. It activates the emotion, the body sensation, the memory. It gets under the defenses. And sometimes, perhaps it feels like it gets under the skin. So when we dream, we're not just watching something unfold. We are participating in a deeply intimate conversation with the parts of ourselves that we rarely hear from in waking life. As I've just mentioned, there are some dream symbols that do appear across cultures. They repeat themselves in different times, places, and psyches. And while their meanings are always personal, certain patterns emerge, patterns that speak to something universal in the human experience. Dreams aren't just one-dimensional. They function on multiple layers, revealing different aspects of the psyche all at one time. All right, so take the classic dream of being chased. At its most obvious level, it may reflect something that has recently happened in your waking life. Maybe it's a stressful deadline, a confrontation you've been avoiding, or an unresolved fear. But go just a little deeper, and it might also be a reflection of an internal conflict, perhaps a part of you that you've disowned, a desire you don't want to acknowledge, or an emotion you've been suppressing. Sigmund Freud believed dreams had two layers of meaning. There's the manifest content. It's the literal storyline of the dream, what you actually see and experience, along with the first associations that come to mind. Then there is the layer of the latent content. This is the hidden unconscious meaning, disguised beneath the surface. The part that remains unconscious and requires another mind to help you decipher as the symbols are put together and placed in the context of you. So if you're dreaming about being chased, the manifest content might be simple. You're running, perhaps fearful. You might even recognize the significance of a deadline at work or the hard conversation you've avoided. But the latent content asks, what are you really running from? A truth? A fear? A part of yourself? Sometimes, though, what the dream shows us may not be what it seems. In fact, the unconscious often communicates in inverted or backwards logic, expressing a wish through a fear, revealing a desire by disguising it as avoidance. For example, you might dream of running from someone dangerous, only to realize later that the figure chasing you actually represents a longing for intimacy or connection. The dream disguises the wish because it's emotionally complex or it's really hard to face directly. Let's also consider the unsettling dream of losing teeth. Some say it reflects anxiety, a fear of losing control or feeling powerless. Others connect it to major life transitions, moments where we're shedding an old version of ourselves. On a psychoanalytic level, Freud might have linked it to a disguised wish. Perhaps it's related to unresolved childhood fears or even repressed aggression. I mean, think about it. When teeth fall out, the bite of anger or rage just isn't as strong. Meanwhile, Jung might view it as a symbol of transformation, a painful but necessary process of growth. And then there are dreams of flying, falling, being trapped. Each of these carries emotional weight, a message wrapped in metaphor. Flying might represent liberation, breaking free from limitations, or it could reflect an unconscious desire to escape reality. Falling may symbolize a loss of control, but it can also reflect surrender, depending on whether the fall is terrifying or freeing. You see, in everything I'm demonstrating, the key to dream interpretation is not just simply to analyze them, but to feel them and feel into them. What emotions surfaced in the dream? What sensations did your body register? What was left unresolved when you woke up? Dreams don't just tell us things, they let us experience them. And if we pay attention, they become a gateway, not only to our unconscious, but to these deeper, more integrated versions of ourselves. Some dreams are beautiful, enlightening, transcendent even. They lift us into visions of clarity and connection, but others drag us into darkness. They haunt us, disturb us, force us to confront what we'd rather not see. We wake up shaken, our hearts racing, unable to shake the feeling that something followed us out of sleep. Jung called this the shadow, the hidden side of ourselves, the parts we suppress, deny, or exile into the unconscious. And dreams are where the shadow comes alive. A dream figure snarling at you from the darkness, a faceless pursuer always one step behind you, a version of yourself that you barely recognize, more reckless, more rageful, more powerful than you ever would allow yourself to be. The truth is, these figures aren't always what they seem. The person you dislike in a dream might not represent them at all. It may be an unclaimed part of yourself, one you reject in waking life, but unconsciously are carrying. A terrifying monster might not be an external threat, but rather the embodiment of a repressed emotion like rage, grief, even desire that has nowhere else to go. A figure you admire may not be separate from you, but instead a reflection of who you could become if only you stepped into your own power. And here's where things get even more interesting. Sometimes the shadow disguises itself in reverse. A dream of running from a faceless threat may not mean you're in danger at all. It may mean that you are the one avoiding something within yourself. A dream of being powerless or lost may be a sign that your power is actually emerging, but you fear what stepping into it might mean. A dream of losing something precious could reveal not what's being taken, but what you are afraid to claim for yourself. The unconscious speaks in paradoxes, in reversals, in mirrors that show us what we're ready or not ready to see. And the more we run from these images, the more power they hold over us. But when we stop fleeing, and when we turn around and face what's been chasing us, something shifts. The shadow no longer lurks in the background, controlling us from the dark. Instead, we begin to integrate it, becoming more whole in the process. So I think the real question is, what happens when, instead of running, you look your dream's darkest figure in the eye? Before we move on, I want to briefly touch on something that can occur at the edges of dreaming. We hear a lot about this. It's sleep paralysis. And if you've ever had that experience of waking up or thinking that you have and being unable to move, maybe sensing a presence in the room or feeling a heavy weight on your chest, you're not alone. Sleep paralysis happens when the body is still in REM atonia. Essentially, it's dream sleep paralysis, while the mind has begun to wake up. It's often terrifying because we're caught between worlds, not fully asleep and not fully awake. And in that liminal space, the unconscious can feel loud, immediate, and raw. In some cultures, sleep paralysis has been linked to visitations by spirits or entities. In psychological terms, it can also be seen as the psyche's way of expressing fear, helplessness, or the sensation of being held by something that we haven't yet integrated. Some clients have even shared that during sleep paralysis, symbols or dream figures appear, further blurring the line between dream and reality. And while it's unsettling, it's another reminder of how powerful the psyche is and how our bodies and minds are deeply interconnected, even in the spaces between sleep and waking. One of the most fascinating aspects of working with dreams in a psychoanalytic setting is how they reveal the unfolding arc of the inner world over time. When clients bring dreams into the work, especially across months or years, patterns begin to emerge. A single dream might seem chaotic or obscure, but over time, the unconscious reveals its grammar. We begin to see how someone's psyche is organizing itself, what defenses are softening, what emotions are surfacing, and where transformation is beginning to take root. Certain symbols appear again and again, almost like emotional fingerprints. A recurring house, a body of water, a distant figure on the edge of awareness. These become touchstones, not just mysterious images, but keys to understanding how someone experiences the world and themselves. And what's even more interesting is that dreams often reflect the therapeutic relationship itself. In psychoanalysis, we call this the transference, how the client experiences and relates to the therapist, often drawing from early relational templates. Over the years, I've been represented in dreams in all sorts of ways. The nurturing mother who finally offers safety and attunement, the cold or distant parent echoing the client's earliest disappointments, the well-meaning friend who tries to help but misses something very essential, the comforting masculine presence, stable, protective, and grounded, the trusted guide on a path the client is just beginning to walk. These moments are profound, not because the dream is about me, but because it's showing us how the client is metabolizing the relationship, what they're yearning for, what they fear, and what they're beginning to trust. I often say to clients, especially those who doubt their creativity, if you ever think that you are not imaginative, just take a look at your dreams. The unconscious is endlessly creative. Dreams pull from the mythic, the mundane, the symbolic, and the sensory. They take what's unspoken and give it form. Sometimes surreal, sometimes painful, often deeply poetic. One metaphor I like to use is this. Each symbol in a dream is like a suitcase. You open it, and inside there are many layers. Not just one meaning, but many. Personal, cultural, relational, spiritual. One single dream symbol can hold an entire universe if we're willing to unpack it. Working with dreams in therapy is like reading a novel that's been written in real time by your psyche. And when we begin to track the storyline, the metaphors, the recurring cast of characters, we begin to see the arc of transformation. The unconscious always knows more than we do, and it's always inviting us to listen. So, with all of this in mind, how do we begin to unlock the messages our dreams are offering? It doesn't require a PhD in psychology or some sort of encyclopedic knowledge of symbolism or becoming a psychoanalyst even. What it requires is presence, curiosity, a willingness to listen inward, even when what you hear or see is surprising or strange. The first and most important step, keep a dream journal. Record your dreams as soon as you wake, before the details slip away. You can write them in a notebook, type them into your phone, or even record a voice note in that groggy, half-asleep state. Whatever method feels most natural to you, use it. Keep it by your bed and write or record the moment you wake before logic of the day begins to erase the softness of night. Dreams are slippery. They dissolve quickly. But if you start capturing even fragments, even just a feeling or a single image, you begin to train your mind to remember. And over time, patterns emerge. The act of capturing them signals to your unconscious that you're paying attention. And over time, your dream recall will begin to sharpen. If you find that you don't remember your dreams at all, try this. Before bed, tell yourself, tonight, I will remember my dream. Write that phrase in your journal or speak it out loud. It's a simple but powerful suggestion to the unconscious, and often just that intention begins to open the door. There are many clients I've worked with who, when I've shared this tip, they return the following session with a dream. Once you've recorded a dream, tune into the emotional tone, not just what happened, but how it felt, how your body reacted. Did your chest tighten? Did you feel like you couldn't move? Were you calm, exhilarated, terrified? The emotional tone is often much more revealing than even the content itself. Sometimes the content of a dream might seem frightening, a death, a chase, a dramatic loss. But strangely, the dream feels calm, even relieving. Or the opposite might be true. A seemingly neutral dream might stir up anxiety or dread. That contrast is meaningful. The unconscious often communicates through affect, not logic. So noticing this emotional dissonance can be a doorway into deeper understanding. As you reflect, ask yourself, what symbols stand out, and what does this symbol mean to me? Again, dream dictionaries can be fun, but they don't know your story. If you dream of an ocean, does it feel peaceful or threatening? If you dream of a house, is it one you've lived in or a symbolic container for the self? If you dream of a dog, the dictionary might say loyalty, but what if you were bitten by a dog as a child? Or what if the dog in your dream reminds you of one you loved deeply and lost? The unconscious is precise. It speaks in your language, using your memories, your emotional history, and context. Universal meanings can be helpful in some cases, but your personal associations are always the most important. So trust your own meanings first. Sometimes dream characters or symbols linger. In those cases, I encourage you to dialogue with them, even while you're awake. Close your eyes and imagine sitting with the figure. Ask them, who are you? Why have you come now? What do you want me to know? You might be surprised by what emerges when you give them space to speak. And if you ever become aware that you're dreaming while you're inside a dream, what's known as lucid dreaming, pause and engage. Don't rush to wake up. Try staying with it. Ask the dream itself for clarity. Step toward the symbol that scares you. Walk through the door you're afraid to open. Ask the question. Sometimes just that act of courage inside the dream can shift something in your waking life. Dreams are endlessly inventive, layered, symbolic, strange, beautiful. Each symbol opens up like a suitcase packed with multiple meanings. Open it, and you'll find a story unfolding within a story, often more than one truth held at once. You don't have to understand every dream completely. Sometimes the meaning comes later. Sometimes it comes in fragments, in a feeling that follows you through the day, in a realization weeks later. But every time you listen, every time you write it down, something within you knows, I'm being heard. Dreams are not just stories that we tell ourselves while we sleep. They are conversations with the deepest part of us. And if we learn how to listen, if we attune to their symbols, their emotions, their layers, we begin to see that they're guiding us gently, quietly, constantly. What dreams have stayed with you? What symbols keep returning, quietly asking for your attention? Tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember, your unconscious is always speaking, not in straight lines or plain speech, but in images, patterns, and feeling. It speaks in layers. It shows you where you've been and sometimes where you're going. The question is, are you listening? Even the dreams that feel strange, uncomfortable, or absurd have something to reveal. Sometimes the truth shows up dressed as contradiction. Sometimes healing wears the mask of fear. And sometimes a dream is simply the soul's way of reaching you when words no longer can. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Reverence for Reverie. If today's conversation has stirred something in you, I'd truly love to hear about your dream experiences. Reach out to me on Instagram at Reverie the Collective, or email me at reveriecollectiveteam@gmail.com. And if you'd like to explore even deeper, join me on the Reverie Collective Journal on Substack. I'll be sharing extended reflections and musings beyond the podcast. You can subscribe at the reveriecollectivejournal.substack.com, and I'll also link that in the show notes for you. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and as always, let the reverie lead you.